So let me go ahead and be a dick as well. That's, okay.
You're lucky you're on that side of the table, sir.
Sorry.
And guess what? We got our first patron.
Oh, we did.
First one, guys. Like, it's crazy. Like within the first, how many episodes? 3.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I just kind of wanted to do a shout out, Christopher. And what we're going to do is kind of give him a superpower. Like, he has super support for the podcast.
I think his superpower should be super first place in everything.
I like that.
He's the first one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
First in everything now. Yeah. Thanks, Christopher.
Yes, thank you. But yeah, I mean, we have tons of stuff on there. If you just go to Patreon or look it up, it's on the websites, everything like that. You'll easily be able to find it. And then one more shout out, because I don't know if you guys saw this. So it was, looking at the Twitter and stuff, and one of the first episode, I think it was. Oh no, the trailer. I had mentioned one of the first comics I bought myself, which was the
Fantastic Four thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I couldn't remember what it was. I don't have it anymore.
That was the first episode.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
No. Oh, well, whichever one. The first or trailer. And I asked people, I was like, if you know which one it is, please tell me, because it kills me not to know. And this guy on Twitter, which weirdly enough, his name is Chris. I don't know if it's the same person. That'd be cool if it was. But he replied, and it was Fantastic Four. It was a special number 400. Why I did not think it was the 400th issue of Fantastic Four, I don't know. But he found it, so I'm eternally grateful for that. That is amazing. But yeah, I wanted to kind of give a shout out to him. He does also have a couple podcasts that he's on. One of them is Batgirl to the Oracle podcast.
Oh, I love Oracle.
Yeah, all of his podcasts are Batman related.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and then he's a co-host of the Bat Books for Beginners, and then also the Professor Frenzy show.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just wanted to kind of give him a shout out too. It's fantastic. I think it's cool.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Noah is eternally grateful.
Yes, for both Chris's. Twice the Chris in one episode. Yeah, thanks guys.
Okay, I don't care what people say. Talking about heroes is just as exciting as talking about villains.
Yeah.
I mean, no.
I like
yes, there's like a resurgence of either the anti-hero, like I like working in the gray, that's cooler than the good guy. Good guys are boring. And like the villains. People are like obsessed with them right now, which again, I love a good villain, as we found out last episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I think heroes are just as important.
Yeah,
and exciting and interesting.
You can't have one without the other though.
You can't not have a hero for sure.
Yeah,
because the comic would be super weird. Like,
yeah,
it would just be like somebody robbed a bank and then
so depressing.
There was no more money in that bank.
Yeah, but I kind of want to see what they do with the money if they got away. Like, what did Vulture do with that extra money that
he invested it responsibly?
I feel like the duality is important though. Like, you do need both. Otherwise, you're just reading about something that doesn't have conflict in it, I feel.
Yeah. That's true. Or the conflict is, what do I spend this $1 million on?
For sure.
Okay, so you're just going to open your own comic company now with only villains headlining.
Yes.
Do the heroes die? What about the heroes? Is this a world without heroes?
Yes.
No,
I don't know.
Wait, are you talking about this world? Because for sure it is.
There are no heroes in this world.
Okay, wait. No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
This is why we need comics.
I think
because
so too.
we need heroes.
I think so too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Because there's too many villains in this world.
Yeah, this is why I'm a fan of happy endings, which heroes help bring about. Because you don't get very many of them in real life.
Yeah. Which is also...
Isn't it weird that, comics seem to be kind of going this way, like the opposite way, though? Like, they feel like a tragic or, like, a terrible ending for that character is something that everybody wants.
Yeah, I feel like tragedy, well, this is kind of hopped on me. I feel like tragedy in comics is kind of hard to do. Like, especially something as permanent as death, because, well, that character's been around for 70 years. He's dead now. Is he, though? We're going to see him again.
They're coming back.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what I think that's probably their downfall with that. Is that they kill him too much, and it's somebody like Batman. Like when Batman died, it's like, he can't be dead. Like, there's no way that he's actually dead. And he wasn't. He was traveling through time somehow when Superman was holding him dead. I don't know.
This is like $1 billion cash cow.
Yeah.
Like, away from the artistic decisions that go behind it. Like, they're not going to get rid of this, you know, just absolutely this bank of a character.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
This is my new way of explaining comics. It's everyone is immortal.
Yeah.
And it's an endless fight between good and evil.
Yeah.
But you know, how, like, the artists half the time I think would be all too ready to just kill characters.
The artist?
Yeah, like,
That's
or I mean,
really...
like the writers as well. Like, I think if Alan Moore had it to do, Superman would be dead, and we all would have said goodbye.
Well, I'm glad Alan Moore doesn't have creative control of all these
thank
characters,
God.
okay?
That's true.
Yeah.
I that is interesting to think about, though, because, I mean, the different writers will do different things, but I guess it is the company that's like, no, they're coming back because they make us all the money.
We got a line of toys coming out. I can't.
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah, I mean, you can't have heroes without the villains. I mean, heroes kind of make the villains, and villains kind of make the heroes.
Well,
They
I
shape
just think,
them.
like, it's important to have paragons that people look up to.
Mhm.
Again, I feel like the gray area is just as interesting, but in order to have that middle ground, like, is that the right thing to do? Is that the wrong thing to do? You have to have villains and, like, people in the dark and in the light. You know?
Yeah, I kind of like this whole, like, kind of anti-villain wave coming about.
What does that mean?
So, it's kind of the opposite of anti-hero. So, like, they have good intentions, but they do bad things.
I see.
And then, like, kind of like Catwoman, how she'll steal and blah blah, but then she'll help out, you know, the little girl that's hurt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then anti-villains are kind of the opposite, so they have bad intentions, but they do good things sometimes. So like Lex Luthor.
I always picture Lex Luthor.
Yeah, Lex Luthor is a kind of perfect example of it because he always has bad intentions when it comes to Superman, but he has done good things. But he'll help the city out. So he'll build, you know, these big industrious, you know, this new subway thing that gets people from point A to B like really quickly, and it helps the city with, you know.
This is like when a corporation like dumps a bunch of chemicals into a river, but also like
gives them powers.
That's
it also
one way
helps
to
the
say
crops grow. Free food for everybody. Well, as interesting as anti-heroes and anti-villains are, today we're going to be focusing on the heroes. Yes. So, welcome to the Fantom Zone. 3 fans, 1 podcast, and a sea of comics.
Big old sea of comics.
Well, first, before we get to the qualities of the heroes that we really love, let's just do the aesthetic part.
Yes.
Because something awesome about heroes is how fashionable they look, and sometimes not. But we're focusing on the fashionable ones.
It's the pizzazz.
The showmanship.
Yes.
It's just like the first thing you see.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think most of us got attracted to whatever characters, even now, if the character doesn't really look good, it's really hard for me to engage. Like, so the 90s were not a great time.
I don't know. The only thing I don't, so I don't necessarily disagree, but you have the X-Men that, you know, the 90s, the cartoon that came out, the animated series. I mean, all of their costumes, I think, were fantastic. Like, you could tell they were all on the same team.
Yeah,
you know, they had the black and red X or whatever.
Yeah.
But all of their costumes were completely unique to them.
Yeah.
But they were their uniforms. I don't know. I don't
know. I don't think the 90s was a good fashion time for anybody inside or outside of comics.
Well, are you just talking about the feathered hair?
Yeah, I'm just...
I mean,
disaster.
Cable, like, Cable now looks, they have really reined that in. At the time, he had gigantic shoulder blades, thousands of pockets. His power were to create pockets, and a gun, like, I mean, the size of like an old log, just a log that had been laying in the street or in the woods.
It was kind of proportionate to his giant shoulder blades.
There isn't a way to make that good. Like, when you look at, I'm sorry if it's so, I don't know. Maybe he could have had a big headdress or something like that.
Cable didn't win your nomination for best dress today?
No, I shouldn't have mentioned him. It's almost, it's like,
I mean, him and Forge kind of look a lot alike. I mean, it's very simple, but it's more like kind of military looking.
Oh, having been in the military, if somebody showed up to my unit looking like Cable from the first one, I'd be like, well, he's hit his head. He's clearly hit his head. And he's taken all of our pockets. The unit's pockets have all... Yeah.
All the pockets are not his.
But also, it was... So you mentioned the anti-villain period. The 90s was really the anti-hero. So it was a bunch of artists, I think, who were like running away from the genre.
Like aesthetically?
Yeah, they did. Like all the new characters needed to look as little like Superman,
So like
as they
dark
possibly
and edgy.
could.
Oh, so like kind of like Punisher, where he wears a
absolutely.
skull
Yeah.
right on his chest.
There's a place.
Not your everyday hero.
There's a place for that, right? But probably not our favorite look.
No.
You know. So what about you? Know what's your
Like if I had to pick a hero that I love,
just
the way they look,
fantastic.
Mr. Miracle. I absolutely love it. It's so out there. I mean, he has red, yellow, green. I think it looks so good.
It's psychedelic.
Also,
it's like Steranko.
How does his costume stay fixed to his lips? Like, that's also weird. I think there is something that explains that, but regardless, I just think he looks amazing.
It's 6 hours of makeup.
He has to be in the chair quite a long time.
No, I think aesthetically, like every time I see him, I love the way he looks. There's not a single time that I haven't seen him. Even Jack Kirby, I think he looks well. His costumes pretty much stayed the same throughout his entire existence.
We should have pictures on the blog or something like that, so they can if not. Google image Mr. Miracles.
It's so cool. In Darkseid War, when they kind of brought him back into the mainstream, he looked fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so striking.
What's hilarious to me about Mr. Miracle is that you wouldn't think it was good camouflage. But then if you look at Jack Kirby's layouts.
Oh yeah, the same colors just everywhere.
Yeah. Bright primary colors.
Yeah. I mean it goes I think that the whole New Gods. I love all the New Gods, how they look. You have Orion, Big Barda, they look fantastic. They weren't afraid to do these big primary colors, but do it in a different way.
Yeah. And it looks alien too, in a way.
Yeah.
Right? It was something you wouldn't see on Earth.
Yeah, which they're not from Earth, so
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I mean those I love Mr. Miracles.
You got anything else? Any other?
I mean there's tons. I mean
I'll do one.
Yeah.
Here's one I think sells itself on the image alone. Despite nobody could name their favorite story this character was in, Ghost Rider. I think I do love the character, and I know a few of his stories and things like that in terms of this is a great story, but they keep wanting to make. He's had 2 movies, neither of which particularly good. Now some people, I actually think the second one has its merits, but Nicolas Cage not helping out too much there. But either way, it's a biker who's a skull whose head's on fire on a flaming motorcycle. That's badass.
I think that is interesting. How did they pitch that idea to whoever approves these characters to come in? I want to make a Harley Davidson rider.
Yeah.
But he has a flaming skull head.
Well, I think what happened, if I remember correctly, Evel Knievel was huge at the time. And there was a period in comics in the 60s and 70s when any cultural, Chuck Yeager happens, and so they're like, well, Green Lantern. It'll be Green Lantern.
Oh, yeah.
And same thing, I think that motorcycle stuntmen had a moment that Marvel was like, we got to capitalize on him. Burn his head.
I love that your nomination for Best Dressed is basically, okay, so strip the flesh away from the face. Just get rid of all discernible features.
Yeah.
Light it on fire. There you go.
Well, what happened?
Best looking.
I anytime I close my eyes, I see a burning skull. So
it's been imprinted.
Yeah, I mean, he is cool. I don't think his outfit might be the best because it's very kind of just.
Well, it's
plain.
not your nom, Noah.
No, I'm not saying.
Stop bashing someone else's choice.
I wasn't bashing it. I was just saying, as far as costume goes, I think aesthetically he looks cool.
Yeah, it's a whole look.
Yeah, and I think the chains add to it. There's small things that's a good example of a costume where you don't need all these bright colors, but it's how they themselves look. And then the chains wrapped around him. I think,
he's like Metron with the chair too. It's the motorcycle. The motorcycle is part of the look. It's almost part of his costume.
You're including the motorcycle.
Yeah, I think so.
Can I nominate Metron for worst dress though? That weird skin tight suit that just has there's nothing good. His chair looks better than him.
Yeah, for sure.
I know my nom, might not count, but speaking of skin-tight suits, I think Selena
Skin-tight
Kyle... Yeah, no. Selena Kyle is probably, I think, the best looking. I just... Inside and outside of her costume, I think she is beautiful. Because I feel like she does the whole cat burglar thing. Like, that can get a little cliche, but she does it, and I like how it looks.
There is some grace to it,
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Like,
Of course.
Is there a particular, like,
I like the
version?
I like the more back in the day it could get a little the more modern versions of Selena Kyle is kind of what I'm talking about. But even like outside of costume, she wears those long, elegant dresses and her hair's short. And I don't know why I'm fixated on that, but I feel like a lot of the feminine characters in comics aren't allowed to have short hair. That kind of like, oh, it's like
yeah, like the thing that was like, oh, there's this beautiful woman depends on how voluminous their hair
yeah,
is.
Exactly.
And,
and I love luscious locks as much as the next person, but I love that Selena Kyle keeps her hair short. I just think she looks great all the time.
I think my favorite version of her costume, one of them, is Long Halloween. I just love how it's just so out there. Like, she has these big cat ears, and it's kind of this weird purpley color.
It's the exact opposite of what I was going for, but do you, Noah?
No, I don't know. I love that costume.
You guys remember the purple costume with the long hair?
Yeah. Again,
with the
not my
little
favorite.
mask?
yeah, exactly.
But
That's why
yeah.
I was like, the more modern
Yeah.
versions of Selena Kyle is
Yeah.
kind of what I'm talking about.
You don't miss the tail?
Nope. Again, can get really cheesy again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I feel. So.
Well, yeah, because at some level it's like, yeah, we get it. You're a fucking cat.
Exactly.
You know,
You're a cat burglar, okay?
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, you don't have to dress like a literal cat.
Yeah, exactly. But, some editing went through DC's background artistry, and they were like, this is the new streamlined version of Selena Kyle.
Do you like that they put like goggles or
Yeah,
whatever
I
now?
do actually. I like that look too.
I think it's a cool look. I like what they did with the Dark Knight Rises, where it kind of like the goggles like flipped up and
And they made like a
cat
cat
ears.
Yeah.
And then they came back down. Like, I just thought that
I don't want to talk about that movie. I really don't.
Man, our next episode's going to be awkward. It's going to be all about Dark Knight Rises. Okay.
I'm quitting now, so signing off.
I'm going to come in with the Bane.
Oh.
But anybody else got a...
Nope.
I mean, yeah, there's tons, obviously, but
so many guys.
those are just the one that
Yeah.
Mr. Miracle always stands out to me. Like, if I'm explaining Mr. Miracles to somebody, I'm like, his costume's amazing. Oh, by the way, he's really cool too.
But his costume, though.
Yeah.
Is it too late to change mine? I want to do...
Yes. Yep. Too late. Moving on. So that was fun. Our more lighthearted take on what we love about superheroes. But this episode, we decided to, instead of showcasing and highlighting specific heroes that we loved, we're kind of going to do heroes that exemplify like heroic qualities that we really enjoy.
Things that kind of make up a hero or
Yeah,
like different
exactly.
facets.
Of course. And we'll give examples of that, but
And that
mostly
we
just-
love.
and that we love. But mostly just the heroic qualities.
Yes.
Makes a great one.
Yeah. I mean, looks is always the first thing that people look at. So.
But time to get serious.
Yeah, let's get serious with my juvenile one. The first one, powers!
Oh, yeah.
Powers, guys.
Yeah, which is another big one.
It really is. I mean, because the thing is that I can't get past the fact that at some level, that's, for me, what kind of defines the entire genre. You know what I mean? As if, like, their abilities or whatever. If if it was just about heroism, it would just be a bunch of, like, cops or something like that fighting crime, and that would be awful. So yeah, I think like what it's the thing, like even to this day, I want to know if the first thing I want to know when I read like a comic book and it's a character I'm being introduced, like what can they do, right? And so I'll throw out my character for this, and that's Nova. Right, Richard Rider. If you don't know Nova, the Nova Corps is sort of like the Green Lantern Corps for Marvel. That is more or less what they do, and it really is. I was reading some of the early Nova stuff, and it's almost a direct plagiarism. Unfortunately, like a dying alien comes to Earth and bestows.
I feel like that
power.
happens a lot in comics too. You're like,
That is
Very
true.
much.
There's a lot of dying aliens.
Absolutely, yeah. But his powers are it's kind of like a good round kind of amount, like super strength, flight, energy projection, gravimetric energy, That's totally comic stuff, because who knows what the hell that is. It's the
power of gravimatics.
Yeah, exactly. And for some reason, it's bright yellow. I don't know why. Gravity.
Wait, so what is that power?
It's basically it's just the name they gave to this energy.
Oh, okay.
So it's the Nova Force is where he gets his power from. It's this big. It's almost it's
is
almost
it a battery?
Like it's not in a battery. It's in a container. No, I don't know. They don't say what it's in or anything like that. But that's kind of what he has, and he flies around the galaxy or whatever as a kind of like space cop or adventure. We'll say the slight difference between Nova and Green Lantern stuff is that usually Nova, like, the core is gone and he's like the last of the core, just like flying around trying to save stuff or whatever. But so the thing I really like about his powers, and what I look for, is I want it to be clear. Yeah. I want to know what they can do. And I think this is something that happens with a lot of like Grant Morrison-y writers or worse, but in that tradition, which is they like to keep things so vague. I don't really have the power. Like, it's like, oh, he has the power to channel souls into memories and use that to give psychic premonitions. Like, you've lost me. Can he lift a truck? That's what I need to know.
Yeah, I think when they do that, and then you have different writers interpreting them. Yeah. So Scarlet Witch is a great example.
Worst example. Ugh. Best example.
I was like, how dare you?
Best example in terms of accuracy on your part. Yeah. Worst in terms of I hate what they've done to the character so much.
Well, because they haven't really fleshed her out still. I mean, I think now she's... What is she, a magician now? Like, is she a sorceress? Like, or does she?
You don't even know.
Is she a mutant?
Yeah.
With that character, they've just... Every writer has... It's come in with a different idea. And it's not so much that each writer was vague about it, it's that they've all wanted to change her. So the cumulative effect is, what does she do? Originally, she was a mutant with the ability to alter probabilities. Yeah. And what they would do hexes, so it's almost like a pun on the fact that her name is a witch. Yeah. And it was just like a weird, like, bundle of probability weirdness.
That sounds cool, though.
It was a really cool idea. So she would throw a hex and maybe like at a car and the wheels would pop or the radiator would overheat or something like that. And so some randomness. But then, not liking that, they tried to turn her into a mage. So now she's a musician. And then...
But didn't they use like her mutant power to kind of explain like, oh, she's really good at mageism because of her mutant power?
And vice versa. So the linear progression was she goes to Agatha Harkness, who's a famous mage in Marvel comics, like second or third level character, so to speak, but to learn how to control her volatile mutant powers via magic. And then they like to play up the fact that she's got magic. And then this writer, Kurt Busiek, gave her chaos magic. It's magic, but it's chaosy.
Almost every time I've read her, it's completely different.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think kind of to the point is like she kind of pops up every now and then whatever the writer decided to do, that's where her power is. So I read her in the new Doctor Strange, and it's like, oh, you're just a straight up sorceress now. Yeah. Like, they don't even, because when in the new Doctor Strange one, magic was gone. Magic got taken from all of existence or the universe or whatever, and she didn't have power. So it's, oh, so you're not a mutant anymore? Like, and that's how I kind of started reading her, as a mutant, and then she's a sorceress, and now I don't.
And then they've made her also like, at times like a reality manipulator of like, massive universal level proportions.
So, and now in the movies, she's just a telekinetic kind of read thoughts type of character. I still don't even really know what she is in the movies either. I don't think they know.
So as an example, that should serve for the fact that it's completely mixed up. Yeah. And I don't think that's to the service of that character.
No. And I think that's to your point too, because I mean, if you read that character and then you read her in another comic, you get confused on the powers alone. So I think it kind of being laid out like this is what this character does. This is what the character's all about. So like the Flash, I'm talking about him again, but like he runs fast. That's all you really need to know in the beginning, and then there's other abilities that kind of go along with that. But it is good to kind of know, like, this is what the character
I definitely prefer when they keep it simple, because if I go on, especially when I'm really confused about what a certain character can do, I'll go on the wiki page, because the internet is a beautiful thing. But like, if there's just like 70 bullet points, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Well,
When will they use this? I guess it feels kind of cheap, so I like when they keep it simple. Like Jessica Jones is super strong. Yes.
Yeah.
Got it. I can remember that.
Yeah, and then
or
I think
Batman that
it's
doesn't
like
have powers.
Yeah, that's true. And
he
he's
just
just
uses
super smart.
technology. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but his list of skills can get kind of like, oh, he's a master of ventriloquism too. Great.
But it's
Is it?
not something that I feel they add or get confused about. It's just he's a smart, rich guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then variations on that theme.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it all still falls under that. Like, he's super smart. He just uses gadgets. He's a great fighter. That's all you really need to know.
Well,
Exactly.
I even think you can have a proliferation of powers as long as it's clear.
and
like,
kind of makes sense with the rest of the powers.
because Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, Superman, Thor, and a number of other characters all have like a number of powers, but there's no mystery about what they can do. There's maybe limitations get a bit, we don't know how much or how refined it gets. But so back to Nova, super strong, can fly, shoot energy blasts. Now you know everything he can do.
Yeah.
And that, you know what I mean? Like, and so, yeah, there's no...
And like how strong it is or whatever happens with it can just vary.
Yeah.
I feel like that happens with characters like Flash and Superman a lot. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of people will say, like, if they're, on comic book boards and stuff, they're like, who will beat this? Everybody's like Superman or the Hulk, because it's like nobody knows exactly their limitations.
Well, and that's why you have to be specific. And it's like, no, the Hulk in issue number 80 is stronger than Superman in issue 121, but...
Yeah, and then it can go the reverse, too, because it could be like, but the Hulk is weak to aliens, because, it's so weird. But I mean, I think is where it gets a little muddy, but I think having a clear power set of, characters' powers is a good thing to kind of go, and they can build it.
Yeah.
They can definitely build onto that, but...
There's the mutant sort of trajectory, like the X-Men. They've almost been like, one power. I mean, that's the trend. There's the other characters, but like one power. It's like he can shoot beams from his eyes. What if he could also run? I said, eyes. That's it. That's all you get. Beams.
Love it.
Speaking of Cyclops, did you see that, like, now his powers come, like, his eyes are a portal to a different dimension, and that dimension has the energy, like, every time he opens his eyes, it's the portal opening and the energy coming out. It's so weird.
Yeah, I don't like it or find it necessary. I feel like that's a writer putting their stamp on the character. So the thing is that if there had been no explanation for the character's powers, I'd say interesting. But the idea he and his brother Havoc both absorb cosmic energy from interstellar energy and then rechannel it through their powers. That was the idea.
Yeah, this super simple makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't need another dimension to worry about. Like, his eyes are portals.
Yeah.
Really?
That's so creepy to picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just...
that's why every once in a while a person would shoot out of his eyes. That's what would happen.
Again, I just like it when they keep it simple and Bat fam, man. No powers. Easy to remember. But if I had to do something with powers, something like Daredevil, again, like doesn't have powers, maybe enhanced hearing if you consider that,
Sure. I think so.
But
he uses it pretty well.
Just easy to remember. I guess I'm not really drawn to characters like Superman that can... what can he do? Like he's super strong. He can shoot.
Yeah, there has been instances, where he just does something that's like, he's never done that before, and then he'll never do it again.
Yeah, I think the key to me lies in the limitations. It's like when they have so many powers, especially like super strong powers, the continuity, it's like, what can they do? It's always different. So I feel going into a situation with Daredevil, you know exactly what he can do. So you can kind of, there's no surprises on like, oh, that's a cheap, like, Ex Machina,
Well, the funny thing to me is that, like, so with Superman, and this happened in the 60s a lot, I feel like they would create very powerful characters, and then instantly you have to come up with some sort of kryptonite. And the more powerful you make a character as a writer, I almost want to be like, okay, children, calm down, because whatever you're going to do, if you make Superman able to split the planet in half or something like that.
Which he
can. Or another writer's going to come along and be like, but now he's allergic to cinnamon. And that's why Superman has 15 weaknesses.
I do feel that the more powerful they make him, or the more powers they give a character, the more they're like, oh, now we have to think of a weakness or something that won't let them do this every time. Just like the Flash with his infinite mass punch.
Yep.
Which is insane that he can do that, because just like the name is, it's infinite mass. I mean, that thing will destroy almost anything. Mm-hmm. Why doesn't he do it again?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Exactly.
Because he either doesn't know how, or he just doesn't.
Like it's difficult, or it's difficult for him to muster the power. Or something
it's difficult for him to run around.
Yeah,
like, I mean that's what his power is,
probably.
Yeah, I mean,
and then you have all those like the Hulk and Thor and a number of characters where they had they would get that they would work their way around the problem of being too powerful by having them have like a human alter ego that they could inopportunely turn into. So Thor, for the longest time, if separated from the Hammer, would turn back to Donald Blake, the doctor with the palm leg. And then he would get smacked by...
What was his hammer disguised as? An umbrella?
Walking cane.
Worse.
Yeah. That can't even stop the rain.
Yeah. So he has to have a cane and an umbrella if it's raining.
And my favorite example, I feel like you can have way too many powers. Yeah. Way too many. Yep. And I love his character's personality, but Martian Manhunter can do absolutely everything. And that kind of worked because they were like, well, we're going to make him terrified of one of the most common things in the world, fire. So great. And there have been a lot of interpretations. But at this point, it's like, well, this character can blow up the planet by blinking, but also they're terrified of pudding.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, that is a little weird. I think it was in the new Superman Doomsday thing, the Death of Superman, the one that just recently came out. Martian Manhunter comes back, or not comes back, he's fighting Doomsday, and he's kind of handling him pretty well. And then Doomsday just throws him into a gas station that happened to be there, and he catches on fire, and he's gone. Yeah. He's done. It's like, every big fight, there's gonna be fire. Like, how is that the one thing that will incapacitate you?
Again, it's to try to limit the scope of this character.
As soon as I see somebody lighting a match, I'm like, well, there goes Martian Manhunter. Like, he's out.
That's, I think it was Grant Morrison that was sort of so annoyed by that. He had Batman take down 15 white Martians with basically a book of matches.
Wait, are you being serious?
Yeah, it was in Grant Morrison's big sort of thing that I can't remember the name of the story. Most of our listeners who are Justice League fans from back in the day will probably remember it. And that was the idea.
So was that he didn't like it, so he kind of made fun of it?
I think he took it to this extreme level. It was the story is the HyperClan comes down and they're disguised as heroes that solve everybody's problems, and it turns out the big reveal, spoiler alert, they're a bunch of white Martians. So they're all John Joneses but evil. And they take out all of the League except for the Batman.
Batman knew the entire time.
It's one of the best Batman moments for me because he leaves a note with one of the all but dead HyperClan, and it just says something to the effect of like, I know. Now, you don't even know as the reader what is going on.
Yeah.
And what he figured out was they were Martians. And he took it down with basically a book
to add to Batman's powers, intense notes.
Yeah. Matches. He liked fire.
Well, I have one last thing. I have to say the reason you love the street level characters and stuff like that. I love them, but I've always gravitated to the opposite, which is like more powerful characters. And at some point, I'm like, okay, there's a meteor that's like hurtling to the earth. Like, we've got to get people to stop it. So let me get Hawkeye. He's really gonna.
Are you making fun of me?
No, not necessarily you, but even and people make fun of Hawkeye and Green Arrow and stuff like that. Even Captain America, there are certain like adventures that they've gone on where I'm like, I don't know if this Olympiad with a shield is really going to be able to fight Galactus all that effectively.
Hey, it has happened.
They have their place, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, but another good quality of a superhero is wish fulfillment.
Of course, that's what they are.
Yeah, I mean, they are wish fulfillment on the base of what they are. They have powers. What if people have powers? What if they were turned into aliens or whatever? I mean, there's
people became aliens.
Or, like Captain Marvel, where now she's part alien. But anyway, Yeah, so I mean, wish fulfillment, it could be, they do so many different types of it. You have situations of there's a terrorist attack, and what if Wonder Woman was there to save it? You know, just like they did in the Justice League movie. There's moments where, what if Batman and Superman were in a homosexual relationship? Oh, wait, Midnighter and Apollo. Like, I think that,
Who are you talking about today, Noah?
yeah, I
I thought there was a Batman Superman story I had not read.
no. No, I think they, for me, if I have thought of that sometimes, like in my weird kind
Is
of
that
like,
who your ship? Is that one of your ships, Noah?
yes. Well, but there is a Superman and Batman comic, and they're always like best buds and stuff. And I mean, if you know anything about Midnighter and Apollo, you know, they're in the Authority. They're analogs clearly of Batman and Superman. Their power sets are the same. Midnighter has essentially Batman's powers, but has abilities. So it's like, what if Batman had abilities and also was in a relationship with Superman?
That's some wish fulfillment inception.
Yeah, and it was, I love it. Midnighter's one of my favorite characters of all time. I mean, he essentially can fight just as well as anybody else in the room because he has a fight computer in his head. He knows how a fight's going to happen. He can just see all the possibilities and then kill somebody with a toothpick.
Yeah, he like predicts the million ways that a fight could happen or something.
Yeah,
like
and
that.
like I think they said the amount of seconds, but it was a phrase of seconds I've never heard in my life. So it was really fast. Like, it was faster than nanoseconds or something like that. But yeah, I think that's another cool thing about heroes or comics in general is just the way they wish fulfill for people, or like, what if this happened, or you know, it kind of dealing with real world things. What if Superman was able to cure global warming by, I don't know, using his ice breath to make more icebergs or something? Like, it might not be the best way and could never happen, but
and everyone drowns.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean,
I wish everyone would drown.
yeah, but I think that's another cool part of heroes.
It's funny too, by the way, that the wish fulfillment is Superman and Batman being in a couple. There's always those two. So it's never like, the Hulk and Hawkeye getting it on. That's what I wish. Yeah,
just
exactly.
proportionately, though. I don't think that would really work out too well.
Funnier.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, that is my kind of wish fulfillment.
I
personally
think that's basically my big draw towards superheroes in general, is that real life sucks sometimes. There are no superheroes in real life, and that it's nice to picture or read about someone who is able coming in and saving the day when they can. Like, what if billionaires weren't assholes? You would have people like Bruce Wayne or Tony Stark trying to use their money to do good things. Bizarre.
Yeah. That doesn't happen nowadays.
Exactly.
But...
So, like, it's nice to read about these characters that get these powers and then take it upon themselves. Because it's not only what if people had the ability to save the day with their superpowers, but you also want to believe that people that get these powers would do the right thing with them.
Yeah.
And take it upon themselves to be the hero, to go and put themselves in danger to save other people. I think that in itself is kind of the romantic version of picturing and like relating to comics, but my wish fulfillment.
Hoping people will do the right thing.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, there are these sort of characters that depart from reality in a certain way, like billionaires. You know, like Bruce Wayne and Iron Man, and you wish that they did that instead of like our billionaires, like Elon Musk, whose contribution, from what I can tell, is shooting a Mercury topaz into space.
Yeah.
That's been thank you.
The people with the power in real life don't really do anything with it to help people. And I know that's a blanket statement, that there are nice millionaires and billionaires out there that do a lot for charity. But again, I feel like it's
not in the psychologically satisfying way of like saving the Earth from a comet.
Exactly.
And even if they did, you don't hear about it. So, I mean, you know, I guarantee you they're donating to all these charities, and that's fantastic. But how often do you hear about that?
Yeah.
I mean, unless there's a billionaire that gives away half of their wealth to a charity, which doesn't happen. Yeah. But I mean, I think that's kind of wishing that if humanity was bestowed with these great abilities, like the mutant gene was activated in everybody, that we would do good with it. I mean, we probably have villains because that's just how the universe works.
Exactly.
But,
You mentioned the X gene, and I think that's another kind of good place to think about wish fulfillment, because the way the X-Men work, right? The way mutants and Marvel work is, and you hit puberty, and then instead of just becoming slimy and hairy,
you can make people slimy and
you
hairy.
discover, yeah, exactly. Well, that's not a great mutant, but you discover that, like, oh, I have a secret ability that's going to help me do amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think another good part about wish fulfillment is, you have people like Jessica Cruz, which is one of the new Green Lanterns, and she is riddled with anxiety. Like when she's introduced, as Power Ring, but as you find out kind of who she was before that and stuff, you find out she was in her apartment for like 2 to 3 years. She never left.
Oh my gosh.
The only person that was ever in contact with her was her sister. And as she becomes this Green Lantern, which is really weird because Green Lanterns deal with will. You have to have great will. Somebody that stays in their apartment for 3 years does not have good will. I mean, they might, but it's not very clear. But I think seeing these heroes kind of come from places that everyday people deal with. I mean, anxiety is running rampant through the world right now, or at least is being more, noticed. You have Baz too, which he's a Muslim, and it shows him dealing with that and kind of the prejudice that's bestowed upon him and his family because he's Muslim and he's a Green Lantern. So it has all of that stuff. You have all these kind of real world and real life problems that people deal with. And it shows that, if also powers were added into the mix, how would that look? And she's one of the best Green Lanterns right now. I mean, she uses that to kind of overcome everything that she's been through.
Yeah, those are some intense ass problems.
Yeah.
I know we got to move on, but I think, like, to me, there was this original wish fulfillment character that's worth, I mean, it was in Captain Marvel or Shazam. Or Billy Batson.
I got confused.
Or whatever.
I know, me too. Which Captain Marvel?
Can I just say, by the way, it's incredibly dumb that they're having his name be Shazam now.
I love Shazam.
I mean, too.
It's the secret word that he is supposed to say.
Yeah, but
to transform, so he can't say his own name to anyone in conversation.
I mean, yeah, but he could just say his name's Billy. I mean, you know what I mean?
No,
most of the heroes don't be like, I am Superman / Clark Kent.
But let's say he flies down and saves somebody. Like, what do we call you? He can't say what they're supposed to. Okay, anyway, the reason I say he's the ultimate wish fulfillment character, at least the original, is because the inception of the character was that. It's a little kid who was most of the readership of comics, especially in the 40s. What if they could just become Superman? If they were nice enough. That was kind of
the point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, by just saying a silly little word.
A little kid grows up and becomes the superhero.
Yeah.
It was the original Big, first of all.
That's true.
And he also outsold Superman.
Yeah.
Captain Marvel did, because it was that next extension. His popularity also launched, in a lot of ways, the sidekick movement, which was this ultimate notion of wish fulfillment, which is like, I want to see myself as the kid in the comics.
That does make sense. I didn't think about that, actually.
I know. I was like, that's such a good point.
I really hope that they do translate that well in the movie coming up. The actor, I'm kind of on the fence.
I love Zachary Levi.
I do too, but I don't know about Shazam.
I think it looks cute.
Yeah, but I don't want Shazam looking cute.
You want it dark and gritty. Is that what you're telling me? Do you want Zachary Snyder to direct it?
No, I don't. But
Christopher Nolan directs Shazam. Yeah.
No, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying it's gonna be bad. I'm just saying I'm gonna hold my
I don't like how fun it looks. It needs to be dark because it's DC.
If they
my thing I said was, I hope they translate it well. Not that it looked dark or shouldn't look dark.
I mean, if there were ever a movie that DC made that could be lighthearted, it's this one.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true. Oh my God. Okay, guys.
Shut it down.
Well, he has a padded suit. Anyway.
Good point. Another quality I feel that I love in heroes is their cultural relevance. Like, they're the product of their time, of whatever's happening, and they kind of exemplify and like force the readers to deal with the hard issues that people are facing.
Yeah.
My example is Luke Cage.
Yes.
He was created a civil rights movement, smack dab in the middle. First black superhero to be featured in his own book, and like he's the name of the book, Luke Cage, Hero for Hire. And it was kind of capitalizing on it's called like blaxploitation films, and it was
like Shaft and Superfly.
Yeah, exactly. They received backlash for being stereotypical films, but it forced people to talk about the racial issues that the country was facing, which I love because
that's a good, I guess, part of what makes a hero, like where they were born, what the times were, and why they were born.
Exactly. I mean,
it's not always just like, oh, Batman is kind of like a dark cop, and like that was the time when he was born. But I mean, Luke Cage is. I guess I never really thought about the time he was made, and that's why he, still around today. Because
exactly, and I know like he got kind of a resurgence in popularity as a lot of these characters did when the Marvel Netflix shows happened. But again, his resurgence is happening in the middle of kind of a crisis in America where young black men are being gunned down by cops, and he's a bulletproof black man, and again, very culturally relevant and significant to what is happening.
Yeah, I think that goes to how well Black Panther was able to do. I mean, it's kind of weird to still think. I don't want to say it's like ignorance or whatever, but I mean, it made such an impact on a lot of people, and especially people in that community, because it was all a black cast. It was that's all the main characters. That was the whole focus. It was set in Africa,
and they weren't responding to like white oppression or something like that. So it wasn't. There's not like a black version of the Bechdel test, but it was sort of like it was black characters who had power, who were responding to their own issues, not just because Luke Cage is a fantastic character, but that was sort of like a character ensconced in, black poverty, which is a great concept, but also I think Black Panther is even a further sort of extension of that.
Yeah, and I think it just, like I said, it just made it made the film mean more. It wasn't just another superhero movie. It was something that meant something to almost the entire community. They could relate to it in a certain way, and they could see like, why isn't more movies like this? Like it doesn't have to be based on because the white man made these problems and blah, blah, blah. And,
it meant a lot to the Dutch community having Ulysses Claw in it. It's a big thing for them. They don't have a lot of.
I think why the Dutch community and Claw? Like, is he Dutch?
He's Dutch.
The character or the actor?
Ulysses Claw is Dutch. That's why he talks like that.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's why I'm glad you brought up Black Panther, was because I think Chadwick had to fight a little bit to keep or to make sure that the character had an African accent.
Really?
It was because Wakanda is the wealthiest nation on the planet in that universe.
Yeah.
And it was untouched by white people.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't they?
Why would they have an accent?
Exactly.
Also doing a fantastic impression of Nelson Mandela. Like really, he sounds just like. I mean, I know that's not necessarily important.
Is that's where he was going for? Or?
It had to be. I mean, I'm almost positive because Nelson Mandela has a South African accent, but he's a very particular one at that. Like it's an unmistakable sound, and I was like, oh, he's doing Nelson Mandela. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think also like another good kind of area in the culture significance is there's a lot more LGBT characters that are front and center. And I mean, now Batwoman is joining the CW. I love Batwoman. Just, I don't know why I didn't talk about her as far as aesthetic. Like, I think as far as the Bat family, she's so striking. And she kind of looks like Batgirl, like when Batgirl has her hair out a little bit. But the fact that it's just bright red.
The artists in her run were amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the art is always so fantastic with her. She's so striking.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the thing we're talking about. Yeah, but I mean, she's front and center now. She's in Detective Comics as a ongoing member. She's getting her own, kind of stake in the CW universe, which hopefully it's good, but the fact that they're doing it and that they're not holding back with it, and she's still going to be a lesbian, and I just think that's great. Like, it goes with the times. Like, this is becoming more accepting, and we're going to throw it in your face because this is normal. Like, don't hate because it's different. And
and I think, I mean, just the larger principle is that the heroes are supposed to represent the readership, like who's reading it, like our heroes.
Yeah.
And as white men, essentially white straight men, lose the cultural center, like in a just a drive towards inclusion and progress and everything like that, you should naturally see characters that
reflect
fit,
that.
yeah, other communities that and shout out to the characters along the way that, like Black Panther, like Luke Cage, I want to say like Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
It does it ever strike anybody how unprecedented that character is, and how the fact that Wonder Woman existed in the 40s, as this, it's completely.
I think it gets lost, like just because it happened so long ago, and we weren't there during the time of all that stuff. But I think her kind of resurgence is kind of happening. Like, I mean, she's the front and center of female superheroes leading the way, and it's a kick-ass fucking movie. Like, you don't need to have always Batmans and Tony Starks and all of them. I mean,
women can do it too.
Yeah, and better most of the time.
I almost cried watching that movie just because it was so unprecedented to go to the movies and see a film about a female superhero. That was it, you know?
Yeah, and it was so beautifully done.
And in the 60s, what's crazy about it is that there were plenty of, or at least a few women characters that were like, were represented, but they really were very demure. If you look at not how she is now, but the Invisible Woman's sort of original instead, she's very kind of, and Wasp was the same way. They're at most precocious.
Yeah.
But they're very, secondary sort of characters. Along the way, Wonder Woman was like, okay, man's world's okay, but I'm a badass and unapologetically warrior. Like, she
definitely was a forerunner. I mean, she had her moments that were a little weird, like within the comics that
they are products of their time.
Yeah, exactly. Like Etta Candy is a perfect example. Like, they had this kind of overweight woman that was a secretary that, like, and it was just really weird how they kind of just made her as this comic relief, but also now that's kind of a good thing in a way, because it's showing a different, women come in all shapes and sizes, like, then they mean just as much. But I mean, Black Panther, like, it's hard for me, like, I can't say, oh, it meant so much to a certain group of people that I'm not particularly a part of, but I can see from the outside looking in that, like, and especially hearing the feedback from it, like, oh, I get it because of characters like Midnighter, since I'm part of the LGBT community, I get it, like, as far as that goes, because yeah, of course I want to see more characters that I can identify with, not just these characters that are in straight relationships that have the same stories over and over again. Yeah, it's good to see diversity.
And I want to see, the comics reflect the world. So even if it's not the case that I'm part of that community, like Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, and is she Pakistani? She's a Muslim. I mean, they make a big deal.
Yes,
a Muslim
I think she
woman.
is.
We'll correct it in the later if we're wrong about it. But either
we're
way,
not super experts.
Yeah,
just
exactly,
gonna say,
I get the facts wrong sometimes. But either way, I mean, it's like I'm not exactly what you describe as a Muslim woman, but I absolutely want that community to be represented in comics, because we see those people. I mean, especially if you live in a city like Austin or Seattle or New York or wherever. Like, these are going to be friends of yours. The idea that they would be excluded from mainstream comics is like bizarre and perverse. So
yeah. I think kind of to the Wonder Woman point too, that when Jane became Thor, I mean, you had
what happened? I'm not aware of this.
You're quizzing him on Thor.
No. I'm saying when Jane became Thor, you had these people that were just so mad, and I get that their favorite hero. I mean, your favorite superhero is Thor.
It was hard for me to deal with.
Was it because it was Jane, or because Thor wasn't in it?
I think the way Marvel handled that, and I know we have to move on, so I'll be brief. But like the way Marvel handled it, they would have been better off taking some of their characters that were already established characters that belonged to these unrepresented minorities and really just making them the center of the large crossovers and stuff. What happened instead was they began replacing their flagship characters with, sort of minority or diversity picks, which is at some level fine. But if you were ever going to do a thing that was going to scare white men, that they were going to be directly replaced.
But I think that's a good thing, though.
So what I'm saying is that there's probably a way to create greater significance and ascendancy for characters of that community without replacing the older characters, it to me, it sort of like makes it a 50-50 zero-sum game where it's like you either have a black Captain America or a white one. And that is probably it doesn't create the best, like...
I agree to Jered's point in the fact that those changes normally aren't permanent.
Yeah.
So I feel like
that's a good point too.
It's kind of pandering. You're like,
That
okay,
is
I
true.
need more representation, so Thor's going to be a woman for a limited run, and then it's
Exactly.
back to man.
Yeah.
Which is like, you can have your beloved character. I wouldn't want Dick Grayson to be taken out and replaced by a woman, but why not have a permanent female character?
Yeah, I mean, I guess,
of,
that does make sense. I didn't really think about that, like the panderiness of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, for a limited time, you get Sam Wilson as Captain America, but then, of course, Steve Rogers is going to be back in a year or two.
And it's condescending, too, because it suggests, like, oh, these characters that are black or women or gay, unless they sort of take the mantle of these already established white male characters, we don't believe in them on their own merit. So it's sort of like, we don't think Falcon can be important unless we dress him like Captain America or something like that.
I think that was the thing that makes... I guess it's what you're saying they should do. Like, goes back to Batwoman, because she forced her way into the Bat family.
Absolutely.
She's she's just kind of working on her own. And then Batman's like, who are you? Like, what are you doing? And
I was going to say, she kind of still prefers to work on by herself.
And it's so weird that she identifies with Batman, but she's like, I'm my own thing.
You got to be a bat in Gotham.
Yeah.
And I think also, don't give the racists and the misogynists and whomever else and the homophobes or what have you, don't give them any case.
Yeah.
And so, if you make, I'm trying to think, if you make Iron Man a black woman, there are plenty, which happened. There are plenty of people that, look, it shouldn't be awful, but they can get mad on the merits of, I love this character and you've changed the character I love.
Yeah.
But if all of a sudden you just make Black Panther the central character in the Marvel Universe, they really just don't have a case. Like, why shouldn't Wakanda Forever be this big crossover? There isn't a reason.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to be bigoted directly, and in that case you lose.
And it's definitely pandery when they're not going to get rid of Iron Man.
Yeah.
And I just think it is weird. They should have probably just made like Lady Thor Sif or somebody that just kind of makes sense that's already there.
That being said, I think most of the stories were well executed.
I think that's why I kind of defend the Jane stuff, only because out of all the ones they kind of changed with, the man is a woman now, or they were white and now they're black.
Yeah.
I think that one, to me, wasn't it one of the longest running ones?
It was one of the longest. It was
so well executed that I was like, I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
Like, I like Thor. He's still around. Maybe he's not holding the hammer.
It was still a limited run, though.
Yeah.
So, like, if you take how many white men are superheroes versus how many black women versus how many black men versus how many women in general, the numbers still aren't reflective of society and the readers in general.
I feel like it kind of might be like a marketing ploy. I mean, it is a marketing ploy in a way, because if a woman starts reading Thor and it is a woman and they're like, I love this, I identify with this character, and then they kill her off, and then now Thor's back, it's like, oh, well, now I don't like this character anymore, but I bought, all 5 volumes of this thing. Yeah, I guess it could go different ways. There's good ways of them, noticing cultural significance, and then also very bad ones.
But at least, not just everybody in this room, but at least the trend is towards the idea that different communities ought to be represented in hero comics. And the question is, okay, now what's the most authentic? What's the most, effective way to do that?
And I think Green Lantern's doing that great right now, only because now they have a female front and center Green Lantern. They also have a Muslim front and center Green Lantern. Yeah. And it makes sense with that kind of character, with the Green Lanterns, because the Green Lantern, you're made a Green Lantern when the ring finds you. So why not make it a woman with high anxiety or a Muslim man? It's just, I think they should execute it better.
We're heading in the right direction, though.
Yes. Yep. Yes.
Next big aspect of superheroes, what we look for, and some of this is just in like superhero stories, I guess, but is sacrifice. For me, that's important. And I feel like there's like little sacrifices and big sacrifices, it's easy to like focus on the big ones, which is like the character jumps and takes the bullet or
gives their life to save the universe,
to stop Galactus
multiple
or
times.
Like that. But as a person who is in a relationship and tries to do stand-up comedy and like has a podcast, I like the little sacrifices, and so I'm gonna put Spider-Man up there as the sacrifice. And there's been a lot of times when he's put his life literally in line,
as heroes do,
as they do. But there's something about the fact that like Spider-Man comics are about him weirdly being busy. Like he's got like a job and a relationship and going to college. And half of the time, I think of the sacrifice there is that he's going on patrol when he really has studying to do.
Yeah,
like,
he has a big project he needs
Yeah.
to be doing. But no, he's stopping bank robbers.
Because an old lady could be getting mugged right now, and how's he gonna? He already knows calculus. What's he gonna, So that's I think that's important, and I think also to the degree superheroes, it's not just about like what we've talked about, the cool stuff like wish fulfillment. It's also about having like an ideal forwarded to us, like these moral like parables about like what we ought to be. Like this is I think a big one, which is like these characters who could just be bank robbers or warlords or whatever. The idea is they put themselves on the line for the little guy. And I think that's nice.
Yeah,
and Spider-Man, as corny as that is, like as cliche as he is, he's the character I think about sort of.
Yeah, I also think like his sacrifices are very much relatable. I mean, how many times do most of us not do homework or not do the thing we want to do because we have to adult and do certain things? Like, I mean, not obviously my sacrifices are nowhere near saving an entire city like New York every night or day.
You haven't even thwarted a bank robbery, Noah.
Not once.
Have you thought about that?
I have gotten a knife pulled out over orange juice. But anyway, I didn't stop him.
But you were like, man, I wish the Spider-Man would come in.
Me and my coworker tried to be like, oh, hey, don't steal that orange juice. Knife got pulled out. What are you going to do about it? Yeah, nothing, man. Like, it's just orange juice, man. Like,
no, I mean, because it went bad. It's sour.
But anyway, I mean, I think there's a whole bunch of different types of sacrifice. I mean, to talk about Wonder Woman again, because she's so significant, it goes through a lot of things. I mean, she gave up living in Themyscira to help man. I mean, she saw all the war and everything that needed. She knew that they needed him or her, and that's why she did it. I mean, she sacrificed luxury and paradise to be in the thick of it. I mean,
to help mankind.
Yeah, and I think
man's world.
Sacrifice is kind of something that defines a hero, a big part of it, at least.
Yeah. My focus in comics, as I said before, is kind of like the relationships that the characters have with other characters in the world. And that's one of the first things that goes is your stability with your friends and your significant other, your children, what have you.
Your dinner with your Aunt May.
Exactly. You have to give up those moments with your family and the people that you love and care about in order to be a hero and, I guess, fight for the greater good.
Yeah. Yeah, and risk getting your neck broken instead of being it for,
or losing that girlfriend, boyfriend, your relationship with your spouse.
I think that's what I'm really liking with DC, or specifically Tom King, and I sent you guys a picture of this. It's currently in Heroes in Crisis, and it's dealing with, so there's this place called Sanctuary, and this is where the heroes go essentially to have a therapy session. Because you see these heroes do all these things. They give up everything. They lose people countless times. How many Robins does he have to lose?
Stop. Just stop
Or how many Wallies does he, Flash have to use, or any number of them, before you start realizing like, oh, these people are terribly broken. These people are holding all of this stuff in. Sometimes you have Superman rage out because he just gets so mad. But I mean, it deals with them like, oh, they have problems. Like, Batman is terribly broken because of all the constant tragedy he's had in his life, and you never see that part.
Yeah, so sacrificing their own like psychological health.
Yeah.
And getting and
that's why I'm excited about this current thing that they're doing with Heroes in Crisis is because you're seeing this completely different side of heroes. Every single one of them. Like, you see them kind of go into these, like, I don't know, the real world type confessional booths, but like they talk about what they're going through and how hard it is for them to even talk about it or why they're doing what they're doing currently.
I love that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, like Matt Murdock too, because he's such a like devoted Catholic.
Daredevil, by the way.
Yeah. Daredevil. Sometimes he has kind of a really, he's conflict with his Catholicism and what he's doing, and he's kind of doing it for that purpose, but it also kind of like racks him with guilt, because there's always that joke of Catholic guilt.
Imagine how many like Hail Marys he has to do, like when he goes to confessional.
That's what I'm saying, is that like even...
And he dresses up like a devil. I don't know. That might not be a sin exactly, but it and he ultimately believes in the greatest sacrificial superhero, Jesus.
Who? Oh, Daredevil. Yeah. I was who believes in Jesus?
Matt is a Catholic.
So I didn't put that together. Yeah, but I think sacrifice is a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from the looks and the powers.
And it doesn't just have to be your life. It just any aspect of...
Yeah. It's especially things that you take for granted.
It would suck if you were one of those characters, right? That almost like have earned their bones on the basis of being sacrificial. Like, I think I mentioned her at the top, Jean Grey. In the history of comics, is almost been like that's her job. It's like
she has to be taken over by an evil force of nature.
It's so sad because she starts off as like, oh, she's just a troubled young girl who joined a school to get control of her powers, and like, flaming bird.
Oh, and now it's wiping out everybody.
She's crazy. We're gonna have to have aliens kill her for the greater good.
So another good aspect, I think. It's a pretty pivotal one, just like sacrifice and all that, is justice. I mean...
that's what heroes are.
Yeah, I mean, that's what...
embodiments of justice.
Should, at least. Yeah. You have some gray areas.
Are you saying justice?
Yeah,
or just us?
Both.
Okay.
You decide. No, justice. I mean, there isn't... I struggled with trying to find a character to just specifically talk about justice with, because most of them exemplify that, or they have their own form of justice and truth and loyalty and all that stuff. But I mean, as cliche as it is, Superman, I mean, I think he's the most justicer.
I love that Boy Scout.
Yeah, justicing.
Yeah, and I think just the fact that he has the nickname Boy Scout.
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
The savior and stuff like that. I mean, he is. I mean, what other hero? I'm sure there is some. Silver Surfer.
This is a rhetorical question. Yeah. Start setting names of heroes.
Yes. But what other one, I mean, finds species or things that are going extinct or their worlds are dying and saves them, creates a habitat just like their planet, makes them happy and puts them in their own home. Like, I mean, he's just full of justice. Like, I mean, he knows it's not right and he wants to fix it. I mean, that's all he ever wants to do. And I think that goes back to his character. That's what he struggles with the most. And that's why there's not many, and it's usually alternate timelines where he kills. But he will if he doesn't have to, he will not do it.
I mean, some of it is like he won't even do things that, not just killing people, but like he won't even fix your farm sometimes. Like in the sense that he thinks he shouldn't intervene too much. So, I mean, like, some of it is, I think for Superman is like holding back to not make, exacting his picture of justice. Because then everybody would lose their free will or something like that.
Yeah, because he could do that, which we've seen. And, like the injustice, funny. The injustice storyline.
Without justice whatsoever.
But yeah, with the injustice storyline, like what if Superman lost all of that and wanted to instill his own version of what things should be like? Obviously, the world just crumbles. Like, I mean, society gets destroyed.
And that theme has been explored a lot in really interesting ways, usually in these dystopian things. Watchmen, in a lot of ways, is very skeptical of the idea of hero justice. Like, well, if these people really did have free reign, what would we do about it? And usually it distrusts them completely, or something to that effect.
Like, who are they to decide what is just and isn't? I think Batman more kind of deals with that. Like, he's a vigilante and there's the cops that he's very closely working with or not working with. And like in The Dark Knight, movies and stuff like that, they kind of struggle with like, who is he to do this? Like, why is he allowed to just do whatever he wants, even though it's with good intentions?
And I think that's sort of like, that's one way to think about justice is like how it connects. So you mentioned Superman. I think that we think of justice as like rightness in that way, or honor, or something like that. But there's also its connection to like, judgment and punishment and stuff like that. And your earlier thing was wish fulfillment. And I think part of our appeal to comic books in justice is the idea of like, what if someone could just make those bad people pay for what they did?
Yeah, or to like fix the scales.
Exactly. Yeah. Because
that's what Dr. Fate's for.
Yeah.
He knows how to
just him. But that, I mean, in the real world, like things happen on such a glacial pace and such weird aggregate forces that the idea of having, a guy who has global level powers, with a hammer or whatever, who could just come in.
I heard that.
Yeah, could because Superman had a construction project, but and then just fix them. I think is a fantastic scenario, and it's really hard not to like wish and fantasize about it through comic books. Yeah, and then there's Punisher, who has his own justice.
I wouldn't say he's in line with justice. I mean, he is with his own. His own justice. Yeah. And I think that goes back to what you were saying, like moral justice, what is right, but what is right for that person. Yeah. And so, which kind of, I guess, goes back to the point of like, who are they to decide like what it is and not? Yeah.
Because how often do you think, even if not consciously, just like, why don't these people get what they deserve?
Yeah, like the Joker.
And and
just kill that one person, Batman.
But he's a clown. Can we just kill him? Just for that alone. But I mean, I think in a lot of ways, like, the Punisher was designed around the idea that, those people should be shot. Like, not that they really should, but like, the kind of like.
He has the whole thing of like, only kill the bad ones.
Yeah.
That I think are bad.
Yeah. And that's some of the best interactions on that thing alone are, I think, Daredevil. And the Punisher disagreeing about, how to bring people to justice.
Matt Murdock is literally a lawyer.
Yeah.
And Punisher is an ex-soldier. So their idea of like, how do you fix criminality or something like that? How you bring them to justice? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that final heroic quality that we really wanted to touch on today was the moral courage.
Yes.
The ability that heroes have to just take a stance.
Mm-hmm. In the face of adversity.
Exactly. And I think one of the characters, again, kind of obvious, that does this often, or at least the most recently, in the most grandiose way.
Lobo.
Was, no, not quite.
Atrocitus.
Okay, so the second most obvious. Captain America.
His name literally is.
Exactly. I mean,
the embodiment for good.
It seems that, yeah. But specifically in Civil War, great movie, great comic run. But just, I mean, it's literally heroes against heroes. He had to, again, in a very complicated act, people fell on both sides, in and out of the comic universe. He was unyielding. He had the courage to stand up to his friends, best friends.
Which I think in some ways is more difficult than your villain. Because, I mean, his villain, obviously, I mean, if Red Skull's like, I'm killing all these people. Yeah,
Cap's gonna be like, no, don't.
It's like, I'm against that.
Yeah. It doesn't take as much courage to stand up to people you don't like.
Yeah, or that are just massacring people. Like, but your friends that you fought with for years.
Exactly.
I mean, to be able to, even if you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not picking sides in Civil War.
I will declare my allegiance right now.
What is your
But no, okay, well, it's muddied, I'm kind of on the side of peace is the obvious goal here. But, I don't know. Team Iron Man.
Yeah.
Nice.
Dot.
I get that.
I thought you were going to say Steve, but I guess.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
I know, I'm bringing up Iron Man I'm bringing up Captain America as my choice because...
And then I don't agree with him.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I feel like the true answer is somewhere in the middle, but especially in the comic run, Tony goes so far. I mean, they both do. They kind of lose their sense of self, but they still are standing up to one of their closest friends.
Yeah.
Because they think that that's the right thing to do.
It kind of seems like, though, like, because how far they go, it's just like, now I just want to prove them wrong. Like, I mean, it's like two friends arguing, and then instead of just being like, okay, whatever, we're done, but like, no, I'm going to keep arguing until I'm right.
Yeah.
Like,
they do terrible things to each other in the comic books. Less so in the movies, especially because I feel Tony kind of leans, like, he kind of sees Cap's side towards the end.
Yeah, definitely more quickly too.
Yeah.
Before there's a lot less bad things.
It really was a watershed moment, I think, for comics in a certain way. Mm-hmm. Because just the idea of, I like that they emphasize like the right decision is usually not the easy decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's all about it, because with Iron Man deciding to sort of lock up his friends or something like that. And in their world, I mean, Captain America is the voice of what's right and wrong. And he's got to make this decision to do what he thinks is responsible in the face of the nice guy who's right. It's like putting Jesus behind bars. I mean, that's a heavy-handed metaphor, but I mean, Captain America's like the moral vision. And
he's supposed to be the embodiment of what's good and what's bad.
Yeah.
And if you're on the other side, Captain America's got to decide to be against the entire... I think legitimate power structure.
And that goes back to her point. Like, he does exemplify that, like having a strong stance of what he particularly feels is right, but he will stand his ground with that, even in the face of his friends. I mean, there's not many stories where that happens, because you have like the Tower of Babel with Batman, but it wasn't necessarily him doing anything to his teammates.
That story was so fun to just see how it unfolded, but the in debate really is the nice button where not so much debate, but they all weigh in on it. But I agree that Batman has that moment where he's like, if you don't see a need to have oversight against this team, you guys are crazy.
And it's kind of funny too, because it's like he's the human in this. Like, I mean, there's obviously humans, but he doesn't have the ability to crack the planet in half.
Yeah.
I mean, he could probably make a bomb that does that, but they would notice if he was doing that. But I mean, I think it was right for him to do that. I mean, in particular, because Superman has gone awry and he has gone bad, technically. So I don't think there's really...
That's why it's hard in, like, specifically Marvel with the Registration Act. The seedling of this was kind of dropped in Days of Future Past. I think it was 1981, where, like, the Mutant Registration Act, and that didn't go well. Like, that was bad. And that's why I was like, Team Iron Man? Because, like, I believe in accountability and oversight. It seems dangerous. It's almost like Lex Luthor. I don't want to become Lex Luthor, guys.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, like, there should be some accountability, some oversight. And it's so bizarre because the first seedling of that in Days of Future Past didn't go well. Like, that was a disaster.
Yeah, because they used it for bad.
It's like best laid plans of mice and men and stuff. It's scary because in both cases you can imagine awful scenarios. Yeah. One in which they're both right in terms of their fears, right? Because Captain America's afraid that politicians are going to control us, and
this is like a register of our identities.
Yeah. And he's not wrong in the sense of it's like nuclear anti-proliferation, where it's like, we're not trusting most governments to have nuclear arms. We're trying to scale that back, but you want them to be in control of the Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But on the other end, you wouldn't have somebody with those kind of powers just like unto their own devices deciding who.
Exactly.
But can I enter in one here as far as like moral courage? Because we think about the fact that like anytime superheroes go to fight, just like I guess firemen or something like that, there's just physical danger, and they have courage to stand up against it. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, Superman does too. I get so damn tired of like non comic book fans. They're like, well, he's invincible. It's like, he's not fighting bank robbers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every one of his villains can kill him. Yeah. Every one. Most of them are more powerful.
Killed the entire planet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but that being said, so all superheroes are kind of risking, but I think Marvel's Merry Mutants have this other added dimension of courage, moral courage, because they are hated by the very people that they're trying to protect.
Yeah, even some, like we touched in the last episode, by their own people sometimes too.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like the Emma Frosts and Magneto and stuff. Like some of them just want to kill him. Like
So just in terms of moral courage, the fact that you have these characters like Beast or Nightcrawler, who aren't one of Magneto's aren't like, yeah, let's kill those
the human race.
those human assholes.
kill the blue ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're blue people. Yeah, I think just goes kind of above and beyond there.
Yeah, there is something to that. I didn't even think about that when I was thinking about who should I talk about with this. But
I know the X-Men are typically so young to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Kids, a lot of the times too.
They end up being like the ACLU defending the Ku Klux Klan. Like, not that's good, obviously, or it's complicated, but I just mean like it's people that are actively trying to destroy them, and they're like, don't crush their head with a metal spike,
please,
Magnus.
Yeah. So now it's comic book recommendation time.
Ha ha ha!
Yeah, I think it's always good to do this. I mean, because I
like
have
telling
got
people what to do.
Yeah. Well, Kayla likes to tell people what to do. And yeah, I mean, I've gotten feedback from some people that have listened so far, and they're like, "Oh, I did end up reading that comic, and it was a good comic, so I think we should keep doing it." So, the comic that I'm going to recommend for Best Dressed, only because I love this character so much. I love the current run. It's Mr. Miracle. It's the title of it, and it's by Tom King. The last issue, I believe, comes out this November, which we're in right now when we're recording this. But the last issue, it's a 12-part miniseries. It is fantastic. The way it's done, it's beautiful. I mean, the first scene, it's not really a spoiler because it's the first panel when you open it up. I mean, it's Scott Free, which is Mr. Miracle. He's killing himself on the bathroom floor.
Oh my god.
And
you're recommending this to people?
Because it immediately draws you in, because every time you see Scott Free or Mr. Miracle, he's always this kind of happy, kind of sarcastic, kind of guy. And you're like, what is happening right now?
What brought him to that point?
Yeah, exactly. And then it just goes on from there. And the way it's just the layout of the comic is amazing. So it's Mr. Miracle by Tom King, which he's currently doing the Batman run. I love this writer. He's great. And then I'm going to also pick for Wish Fulfillment, and I talked about him as Midnighter. So Steve Orlando did 3 comics, 3 trades. It's Hard, Out, and then Midnighter and Apollo. So it's by Steve Orlando. It's Midnighter. It's current. It's, easy to get into. It's self-contained. Hey, Dick Grayson shows up in it.
What?
He's in it.
Borrow it.
Yeah, and there's a steamy bathroom scene too.
Oh my god! Say no more.
But yeah, it's really good. Those are the ones I recommend.
Awesome.
Kayla?
Yeah. For cultural relevance, of course, because I brought up Luke Cage, and I think he works best with Danny Rand, because I love the Heroes for Hire. Just read the most recent Heroes for Hire run. It's only 15 issues. And you get a good feel of Luke Cage's character, but you also get a good feel of his relationship with his wife Jessica and Danny and all of that stuff. So I feel like that's a good one to read for Luke Cage.
It's good to kind of focus in. And
yeah, exactly. It kind of gives you a broader scope of his life. And then for the moral courage, read Civil War, watch the movie. I feel like that's a good example. And the movie and the run in the comics, I love them both. So
good. Yeah. See, you have 2 easy options. Either read it or watch it.
I didn't really have to think hard about my recommendations this week. So, Jered, what's yours?
So we got 2, obviously, for Power, the appropriately named Supreme Power. So this came out in 2003. Marvel always had an analog Justice League team that they would have fight the Avengers, called the Squadron Supreme. So really talented sort of TV and movie writer J. Michael Straczynski redid that team on this sort of standalone title, Supreme Power. And it was sort of what would happen if the Justice League sort of really existed on Earth. Mm-hmm. So just to give you a taste, because it's like the first few pages. So Superman, or like Mark, I can't remember his last name. Anyway, I think it's Mark Miller, Mark Milton. Anyway.
His name's Clark Kent.
Yeah, well, in this case, it's Mark, and his pod lands on a small town in Kansas, and within about 6 hours, the government gets to the pod. And so they're hyper realistic depictions of the Justice League, but also hyper realistic versions of what would happen if they had their powers. So it's heavily focused on like what would characters or
actual physics.
Yeah, it's kind of like a grittier version, like more realistic.
Absolutely. So that's really good.
Like if Christopher Nolan was to write a comic.
It very similar. It's weirdly enough, it's not as dark, but it's very grim. If that makes any sense. So again, J. Michael, edit that. J. Michael Straczynski, Supreme Power came out in 2003. And then for Sacrifice, I could have picked a lot, but I went with For the Man Who Has Everything. It's a Superman story. It features Mongol and a few other characters. You're really going to love it. I don't want to give anything away, but it's...
but sacrifice happens.
It's maybe the most sacrificial of sacrifices.
Yeah, it's one that definitely sticks with you.
And here's if that doesn't entice you enough, it's I had to look this up. I didn't realize it's the team of Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. In 1985, they're the famous team that wrote Watchmen. Both the writer and artist. This is a year before Watchmen was released. So this is some of the best comic book writing and art, the best collaboration. Do right before they did their masterpiece.
So prepare for fun times.
Yes.
Yeah, they adapted that story into the animated series.
That's right.
As well.
That's right. It was that good.
I don't know what...
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Superman Annual 11.
Oh, that's the issue.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you know?
It happens in a single.
Do you know
issue.
where it is in the animated series, just in case people want to watch it?
Yeah, it's in the first season of when Justice League Unlimited, when it came back as not just Justice League but Justice League Unlimited. It's in the first season.
Yeah, it's that one's really good. It's a little different, but the same point gets across. So that's it for recommendations.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at the Fantom Zone Pod for more podcast updates. I can't stop that.
Stop your heart beating.
I can't turn it down.